This video is brought to you by
Auckland Photographer's Clothing.
In this lesson we talk about the manual mode in detail. And we already used the manual mode in the previous lessons, but in this it will be more detailed. I have here my beautiful shell again. You can choose, of course, whatever object you want to photograph. And I changed my lens. I changed to an open aperture lens. What exactly aperture means, I will teach you as well in another lesson. But for now, just important, I have a longer lens now, so 55 millimeters in comparison to the other zoom lens I had before. And this lens can do an maximum open aperture of f1.8. I talked about that in the lens lesson. So f1.8, very open aperture, and that means a lot of light can get into the camera. That means as well, hopefully, we get a nice blurry background and achieve the typical photography look you want to achieve. So this is what I will do now. I will place the shell in a shadowy area. Let's place it over here. So it's now in the shadow. And I switch now my camera settings from f22, which I had before in the last lesson, to f1.8. And you just take care of the f, so where it is f22, for example, or some other value at the moment, you try to find the wheel that changes it to f1.8. Maybe it's 2.0 with your lens, it's depending what your lens you're using. My maximum open aperture is f1.8, so I go to the max open aperture, f1.8 in my case. So this is the value I have now. I'm still in manual mode, of course, and I go to ISO 100. Should be anyway, because it was in the last lesson as well. And now I only change the shutter speed. And I look here through my camera, it's a pretty dark image now. And I change the shutter speed and play the zero game. And now I have something that is called the minimum focus distance. And this is something that occurs especially with longer lenses, and 55 millimeters is a slightly long lens already. And that means I cannot focus, I cannot get a sharp image when I'm too close. If I had a macro lens, I could go pretty close, but this is not a macro lens, so I have to keep that minimum focus distance. And usually it's standing somewhere here on the lens. Now with this lens, it's standing here on the bottom and it says 0.5 meters is my minimum focus distance. This is around an arm length, I would say, maybe a bit longer. And this is the distance I have to keep. And you will just recognize it, even if it's not written on your lens, because you cannot get a focused image. So I have to go a little bit backward now. This is it. Now I play the zero game only with the shutter speed. The aperture, f, should stay on the maximum open, f1.8, ISO 100. And now my shutter speed is at 1/320th of a second. Okay, photo done. And as you can already see with the open aperture, nice blurry background, that's what I wanted to achieve. So this is actually one thing now I chose as a photographer. I want to use that lens, I want to use an open aperture, I want to photograph that thing, I cannot go too close, I'm in a shadowy place, and this is the first photo. So now I want to take the same shot, but in the sun. Let's see what happens. I put the shell now in a sunny place, and right now the sun is pretty low, so it's not that super strong. And I want to achieve the same look, but now in the sun, not in the shade. So I have f1.8 still, ISO 100, still manual mode, but now I have to, of course, adjust the shutter speed. Because when I look now through my display here, through the viewfinder, I can see it's totally overexposed. Or in simple terms, too bright, plus 2.0 and blinking. So I have to adjust now only the shutter speed again, so only the thing with the slash, not the f. The f should stay 1.8 in my case. And I focus now here on the beautiful shell and adjust the shutter speed until the plus 2.0 turns to zero. Zero game, you remember the zero game. And now in my case, it's almost not possible, even though the sun is pretty low. Now imagine it would be around noon or something, so the sun a lot higher, then it would not be possible to expose an image because my maximum shutter speed I have here is 1/4000th of a second with this camera. And a 4,000th of a second, f1.8, ISO 100 here in the camera settings, is almost overexposed now. So I take the image, but if I would take the exact same image in, let's say, 1 hour later, then it would not be possible to take a proper exposure with f1.8, ISO 100, and the shutter speed is maxed. So it's not possible to use a faster shutter speed. So what do we have to remember? In some situations, it's not possible to use the camera settings that I want to maybe, because of the light and because maybe of the limitations you have in your camera. So what can we do in this situation now? Of course, we can use a different aperture. We can close the aperture, so not f1.8, but maybe f2.8. And in this case now, it gives me some freedom to choose from. Now I can maybe adjust the shutter speed again, or I can also use the aperture to make the image again on the zero, play the zero game, adjust the brightness, and then have a properly exposed image. And that's what the zero game is about, and that's what actually is photography about. That simple is the manual mode. Let's choose a third object.
You want to take photos in pouring rain or bitter cold? Easy for me, because of the best jacket system for outdoor photographers. My name is Benjamin Jaworskyj, professional photographer for over 12 years. And this is my signature edition of the Hawkland 7-in-1 Parker Pro jacket set for photographers. When I'm outdoors, I want to focus on what's truly important. I want to feel comfortable, warm, dry, and always be ready to take the photo I have in mind, no matter how bad the weather. One set, 3 jacket layers you can wear in 7 ways, made for professional use. Check it out for your adventures. Now on sale. Discontinued and off-season items up to 60% off at www.hawkland.us.
Hawkland. Photographer's clothing.
I found my third object, that beautiful flower here in the foreground, and I change now again my aperture to the max open aperture, which is f1.8 here in my case. So change that. And because the subject is not that bright, like the shell and the rock, it is possible to photograph that now even though it's in direct sunlight. If it's not possible for you, you can look for a flower or something else in a more shady area. So f1.8 in my case now, shutter speed now is in my case here with the zero game at 1/200,500th, something like that. And I now focus here on the flower. Zero game is played, so the exposure should be right. And what I did not explain yet is the exposure simulation. And that is quite a good tool, especially with modern cameras. Even older cameras, like 10-year-old cameras, have it built in, but you have to activate it over your live view. So there might be a live view button you have to press. With some older Canon cameras, it's only with some older Canon cameras, it's the record button actually, and then you switch into live view. And live view means everything that your camera sees, you can see on your screen. And with DSLR cameras, so cameras that have a mirror, I explained that in another lesson as well. If you haven't seen, check it out. With DSLR cameras, you see everything through your viewfinder over a mirror. And when that mirror is flipped up, you can see actually what your lens, what your sensor is seeing with the camera settings you choose. And with mirrorless cameras that I use now here, you always see what your sensor is seeing. So in my case now, I can see here over my screen that an f1.8 has that blurriness in the background, the brightness is this and that, and with some cameras you can't see. So when you use older cameras, you might only see that -2, +2, 0. You can play the 0 game without seeing the actual image because you only see that marker on the slide. But with more modern cameras, you can also see your image, like you would get it without taking the image. That is a pretty cool feature. Exposure simulation, it's called. In some cases, the exp sim, especially with Canon cameras, is flashing, blinking. And that means it's not possible to show the exposure simulation. And that is usually when it's too dark. So when you photograph in the evening or at night and it's too dark, then it is flashing. It's not flashing, it's the actual image you will get. Because in some situations, you might say, I don't want to play the 0 game, I want to play the +1 game maybe, or +0.7 game or whatever. So in simple terms, I want to expose the image a little bit brighter. And you don't want to always make a test image. That's what I did when I photographed with a camera that had no exposure simulation. But with a simulation, you can just see what you get. So in my case, I can now just dial the shutter speed, so the thing with the slash, and make the image a bit brighter. And I will now do it. I will make a brighter image. And now I will just dial that wheel again and don't look only for the 0, but what I like. So I'll make it a bit darker now. 1/3200 it is now, in my case, for example. A bit darker. Or 0.004 of a second. Also a bit darker. And that is the great thing about manual mode. And that's what I want to teach you in this lesson. That you can choose, you have the option, and you decide as a photographer what you like. You want that blurry background? Fine, take the open aperture. You want it a bit brighter, a bit darker? Fine. Just use your shutter speed however you want it in this situation here now. But there's a downside as well, I will show you now. One big advantage in manual mode compared with auto mode is that I can take different things in consideration that the camera cannot do, like wind. And here with this flower, the wind right now is not that much of a problem because it's just a slight wind. But imagine the wind would be a little bit more, or the subject you want to photograph is just a little faster. And we will talk about moving objects later on in that course. But for now, I want to demonstrate you why sometimes the camera in auto mode can make a very bad decision because it does not know that there's wind around. I have now the exact same settings like before, but now one thing I will change, and that is wind. And I will add strong wind now with my fingers. So I focus here on that flower and I will just shake it. And you see, I take an image shaking, no problem. It's such a fast shutter speed that the movement is sharp in the image. So everything focused, everything sharp, no problem. But now let's do the same scenario and change some values. And I will now close my aperture to f22, so not f1.8, open aperture, now closed aperture, f22. So the max closed aperture, and you will see immediately in the exposure simulation and as well in your values below -2, dark image, almost black image. So I don't see much here. So I have to adjust now to my 0 game. And I will do that now again with the shutter speed. So first aperture f22 and now shutter speed until I reach my 0. Play the 0 game. -1. And now, little spider, goodbye. -1 and 0. And in my case now, 0 is achieved with 1/10 of a second. And in your scenario, it might be totally different. And remember, I'm in the sun right now. When I would be in the shadow, it would be even a longer shutter speed. And there's a disadvantage with a slow shutter speed. Sometimes it can be an advantage, you will learn later. But in this situation now, it's a disadvantage. And the camera might choose it because it does not know. It doesn't know that there's wind or a hand involved. So let's see, I have my hand here, I focus, and now I shake, and you see, it's just a blurred image. Why? Because shutter speed is too slow. But when I'm in manual mode, and when I'm a skilled photographer, And when I know about that issue, know about wind, and just observe the situation that is around, how is the light, how is the wind, is there any movement, then I can make the right camera settings. And that's what I did now. That's what I wanted to show you. Your exercise for today is to try out the exact same that I just did. Look for something to photograph in the shadow with the maximum open aperture available with your lens, like in my case f1.8, and then try to photograph the same thing in the sun and see how it changes and see if it's possible with your shutter speed. And also look at your camera. Maybe you can do a faster shutter speed with some cameras. That is possible. It's important that you know how to handle your camera. And then look for a third subject, a moving subject like a flower. You can just flash a little bit around and shake a little bit and try to photograph it with a fast shutter speed, and then close your aperture to the max and try to photograph it with a slow shutter speed and see how everything changes. And not only look for the movement, but try to analyze the image, what also might change. Look maybe at the background, because in the next lesson you will learn how the aperture affects the background.
This video from my beginner's course Simply Learn Photography from 2023 is part of my photography legacy. Over a period of 5 years, I will publish my courses from learnfromben.com for free and with ads here on YouTube. So everyone can benefit from my knowledge regardless of budget. So subscribe now to the channel and spread the word. And do you want all 9 courses from the last 10 years immediately bundled together and without advertisement at a super affordable price? Then go now to learnfromben.com and get the XXL Bundle as an instant download or stream via the website at www.learnfromben.com. More than 22 hours of the finest learning content on photography, filming and image editing in all levels of skill. Link is in the description and in the comments below. And also check out the sales section with my signature tripods and D-filters and books. Everything is on sale up to 60% off, as long as stocks last. Thank you for your support. Videos from the courses are published every Friday at 5:30 p.m. German time. My name is Benjamin Jaworskyj and I wish you all some really good photos.